Turn tragedies into your own triumphant life story? If so, this podcast is for you. Listen to powerful guests who have persevered through challenges so you can gain strength to build your championship life. The host of Professor of Perseverance podcast, Dr. James Purdue.
Hey, come on, it's time for us to get started, get some inspiration, some motivation, something to fire you up today. And use one little gold nugget, and you'll get more than one. Use one little gold nugget you can get to help you get through your next trials and tribulation, challenges, difficulty, hardship. And be sure to share that with someone else. Pay it forward. Help them get through their difficult times. Hey, today on our podcast, we got a gentleman here that back in 1992, about 18 years old, working the farm. And next thing you know, both of his arms have been removed from him from the machine of working in the farm. So today, let's bring in bring in John Thompson, the author of Home in One Piece. That's a good title, fitting title for what happened to you. Home in One Piece. John, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. We came up with that title actually when I left the hospital. They asked me what it's like to be going home, and I said I came down in 3 pieces. I'm going home in one.
That's right.
That's why I gave the title for it.
That's right. So, yeah, I wasn't thinking about 3 pieces, but I was just thinking pieces. But yeah, both arms gone and you and your body, and then come back with everything reattached in one, come back in one again. Like I said. Well, man, it's an amazing journey, amazing story. And I didn't have a podcast back in 1992. I don't know if many people did or any.
Back
then, early 2000, I remember hearing a thing was called Blog Talk Radio is what it was. And then all of a sudden this podcasting took off. So from there. All right. Well, John, thank you for being here again. And let's go ahead and you put us into the story where you think's fit, and we'll go from there.
Well, it's January 11th of 1992, and I was just working on my family's farm, and I was unloading barley from a grain truck into a hopper bin for hog feed. So we had feeder hogs, cattle, and we had a lot of cropland. And I was using the tractor that was running the PTO shaft to the grain auger, and the grain auger didn't have a shield on the PTO shaft. And I was just working on it, and I had my winter coat on and insulated shirt underneath it, but it wasn't tucked in, so it's pretty long, hung almost down to my knees. And they assumed my shirt just got caught in the PTO shaft and just wrapped me in. It spins this way, so just wrapped me in. And I kind of remember it, but not really either. And then the next thing I know, I'm just waking up on the ground. I had no idea what had happened. And my dog Tuffy, who was a blue heeler I got as a puppy, he was sitting in front of me licking my face, and he's the one that woke me up, actually. And I was laying on my right side, and I couldn't figure out what happened. I knew something was wrong. And I went to look at my right arm, and I couldn't find it anywhere. And I thought it was broken behind my back.
Yeah.
And then I looked at my left arm, and then I noticed it was missing because when the arms came off, it took the skin from the shoulder down, so it just had a bloody stump on this one.
Yeah.
And the right side, it left some of the skin. And then I noticed that this was also gone, but I didn't notice it right away. And then I just put my back against the tractor tire and stood myself up, and my dog is sitting right in front of me looking at me with his head cocked to the side, his ears sticking up. And I just started screaming for about a second. And I was concentrated on my dog Tuffy, and I just immediately calmed down. And then him and I walked up to the house. And I remember when I was going to the house, because he was on my right side, and I had my ulnar nerve hanging on my right shoulder where my arms were. And it was swinging back and forth, and then it came up and slapped me in the chest and stuck there because I didn't have a shirt or jacket on anymore. It ripped everything off.
Yeah.
And then we got to the house, and we're on the deck, and I had my boots on, so I was trying to open the sliding door, the patio door with my boots, but they were slippery. I couldn't do it, but I had the bone sticking out of my left arm yet, and so I took the bone and was trying to slide the door open with that, but there was no muscle attached anymore. It just bent back, so it was broke.
Yeah.
And then I walked around into the garage. And then him and I got in there up on the steps, and I just was able to get my boot in between the screen door and the frame and get the screen door open. And then I got that open, and I just got on my knees and bit the doorknob with my mouth and turned it with my head, and was able to get access into the house. And then I was just standing there bleeding all over the place, and I was trying to figure out, because I had to get to the office, but it was on the other side of the house. And so I just trucked across the living room and kitchen, the house, and I got to that door, and that door also was locked or shut. And I tried kicking that one open, or with my knee breaking it down, and it didn't open. And so I hit it really good, and I put a hole in the door, and then I bit that doorknob also and turned with my head and got into the office, because that was the only place we had a push button phone. Everything else was still rotary dial on the walls. And so I sat down in the office chair and knocked the phone off with my nose, and I started dialing for help with my nose, because back then, this is 1992. We didn't have 911. It was the full 7 numbers yet. And I kept getting the operator saying, "Oh, you dialed the number wrong and it's incomplete," and driving me freaking nuts. And then I grabbed a pencil with my teeth and started dialing out. And I called my friend at the time, and her line was busy, so then I hung up. And then I called my cousin, Tammy, who was just a year younger than I was and lived in town. And I called her, and she's like, "What's up?" I said, "This is John. I have no arms. Call me an ambulance." She's like, "Oh, cool. What are you doing?" And I said, "Tammy, I don't have any arms. I said, you need an ambulance." And she didn't believe me right away, because I like to joke around a lot.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it took her a few times till she realized that I was serious. And then she's like, "Okay." And I have no idea why I called them instead of the ambulance, because we were taught as soon as we could speak to learn that number for the ambulance. And I think I just wanted somebody there, or talk to somebody in my final moments that I knew, just to have somebody there.
Yeah, yeah.
And I remember I hung up the phone because she couldn't call out unless I hung up my end. And then she called her stepmom, and her stepmom was the one that called the ambulance for me. And then she called her mother, and then they came out. And they were there maybe 10 minutes after I made the first call, because they're about 4 miles away. And they called the ambulance. Then my aunt Renee, she came in the house, and she starts yelling for me. And by this time, I was already in the bathtub, because I was still bleeding a lot in the office. I was getting blood everywhere. And so I went and sat in the bathtub, because I don't want to get blood on everything. And I heard her coming in, and I started screaming at her, "I'm in the bathroom, but don't come in here. I don't have any arms. I don't want you to see me." And the shower curtain happened to be closed on our shower. And I'm just sitting in the bathtub, kind of on my heels, hunched up, leaning against the back of the shower. And she came in the bathroom, and I said, "Don't open the curtain. Don't look at me." I said, "I don't have any arms. I need an ambulance." She says, "We called an ambulance. They're on their way." And we talked for a few minutes.
And she was going, what do you mean you don't have any arms?
Yes, because she had no idea, because she could see nothing.
What do you mean? Yeah.
All she saw was when she came in the house, there's blood on all the walls, all the
Yeah.
way through the house to the office. You can see in the office room, there's blood all over the floors in the office, and there's blood on the floor in the bathroom. So she had no idea what was happening, except what I was telling her. And I'm sitting there, I'm still bleeding, and I'm like, I'm just getting really dizzy and really tired. I said, "I don't think I can sit here anymore," because I wasn't, like I said, I was sitting on my heels. And I said, "I'm going to fall over." I said, "I cannot do this anymore." And she's like, "John, let me help you. Let me open the curtain." Then I finally let her, and she just opened up the curtain and didn't really respond. She was like, "Okay, let me pick you up." She sat me on the toilet, and then I just sat there, just kind of leaned against her and her shoulder. And we
Yeah.
sat there, talked a little bit. And I said, "Can I get a drink of water? I'm really thirsty." And she gave me a sip of water. And we just sat there and BS'd until the ambulance showed up.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
and with the ambulance, like, I'm a huge supporter of EMS, because this is a local volunteer ambulance crew where you call them in, and then all the volunteers, their phones ring at home, and they have to answer the phone. "Okay, there's a call coming in. We need to get to town." And my town where the ambulance came from was Bowden, and that was 13 miles away from my farm. So then all these farmers or people have to go to town to get to the ambulance, wait for everybody to show up, get everything in the ambulance, then come out to the farm. So it's not like they're sitting there waiting to go. So everybody had to get to the town, to the ambulance hall, get in there. They started coming to my farm. Well, when they called, they said John hurt his arms. That's all they knew. So they thought I had a broken arm. They had no idea.
Yeah.
So when they got to the house, they get in, they see blood everywhere. And it was just funny. I still laugh about it, because there's 3 of them, and they walked in the bathroom and saw me sitting there with no arms, and the mouths just dropped, and they turned around and walked back out, because they were just in complete shock, because they'd never seen this before.
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
And the other thing with it being volunteer EMS, the one gentleman who was the driver, Rick Flatten, he was my local elevator manager. And he just started the EMS crew, and this is the very first run he's ever done. He's never done it before, so I was his very first call he's ever did. And the other gal, she was our school bus driver, and the other gal was my classmate's mother. So I knew all these people very well. They all knew me, and I've known them for many, many years. And that's the thing with local EMS, that you got to take care of people and family. So it's extremely difficult for them. And they looked at me like, oh my. And they walked outside, and took them a couple seconds to get themselves collected from the shock of it all
Yeah.
and figure out what to do,
They
because
go out in the hallway, they look at you, and they go out in the hallway and say, um, I saw this on Friday the 13th.
yeah, exactly.
Jason came in with that machete, or they're talking about the chainsaw massacre. And
Yeah.
you go, wow. But yeah, that would be, especially since, like you said, they just heard arm injury and they're
Yes.
thinking possibly a broken arm. And then they come in and see this. Wow.
And plus knowing who I am so well. That's
Exactly.
the other
Yeah.
thing that people don't
Yeah.
understand with these volunteers, how much courage they have and how much respect they have from they able to do what they're able to do. And then they came back in, they're trying to figure out what to do with me, because like I said, it's all volunteer. They have oxygen is pretty much all they can do for me. And I
Yeah.
didn't have any arms, so they couldn't put tourniquets on me because it was all ripped up
Yeah.
and bleeding everywhere.
Couldn't start an
And
IV.
yeah, there was never put an IV yet.
Yeah.
And Rick asked me where my arms were, and I said, they're down by the grain auger. I said, turn off the tractor. I said, it's still running. Shut the truck off, and it's still dumping. I was still unloading. I said, get everything turned off because I don't want to wreck everything down there. Then he went down, and my one arm was laying right underneath the PTO shaft. And he was trying to find the other arm. He couldn't find it. And he figured it got thrown into the hopper, or the grain auger got dumped in the grain bin. So they just figured they'd send somebody else out to try to find it, bring it to the hospital later. And he couldn't find it, turned the tractor and everything off. He started walking back towards the house, and my dog Tuffy started barking at him. And then he turned around, and my dog was standing over my other arm, which was thrown about 50 feet away.
Yeah.
Both my arms were still in the sleeves of my shirt and my jacket. It just ripped them right off.
Uh-huh.
And he went and got the arm from my dog, and then he brought those up to the house. And he got back in the house. He said, do you have trash bags and ice? I said, yeah, the trash bags in the laundry room on the bottom shelf. I said, there's ice in the freezer upstairs, ice in the downstairs big freezer, and coolers, and some where to get everything out. And so he's collecting my arms, putting everything on ice. And the other two ladies are trying to figure out what to do with me. So they're bringing in the stretcher, getting ready for me to strap me down. And I'm sitting there on the toilet yet with my aunt. And they're like, okay, we got everything ready to go. We need to get you the stretcher, but we can't get the stretcher in the bathroom. How can we carry you? And I said, well, I have my legs yet. I said, my arms are lost. I can walk.
That's right.
And like, you can walk? I said, yeah, I can walk. It's just my legs are fine.
How do you think I got here?
I know exactly.
Yeah.
And then I just walked over the stretcher in the hallway and laid down on it, and they covered me up and strapped me on. And that was probably the scariest part, was when they carried me out, because they lifted me up to get me down the steps and tilted me just a little bit. And with no arms, I had no way to grab anything to screw myself.
Yeah.
And I just started freaking out that they're going to drop me. And like, you're strapped on, you don't worry about it. And I was just terrified. And one thing I remember when I was with my aunt was, because I didn't have any pain, but my back was burning. And I asked her, I said, do I still have my backbone? I said, I think my spine is out. And I just had a little scratch on my back was all that was wrong. And I had a little scratch on my chest. Were the only issues with me than, my arms, obviously. And then we load me up in the ambulance. We're driving up to Harvey, and that was a 28-mile trip. Wow. And by this time, it took the ambulance 28 minutes to get to me. And then after I made the call, or after they made the first call, and they were going up there, and I remember asking them how fast we're driving, and they yelled at Rick to slow down. She was driving too fast. And I yelled back, said, don't slow down.
That's all right.
Then I kept asking them to turn the sirens on, because I was getting kind of bored. And, well, we don't want to turn the siren on, get you all excited. And I said, well, turn the siren on, because I'm bored. So, I need to be entertained.
Hey, we went to special attention here. Get their people off the road.
Yeah. I'm like, I want to hear the siren going.
Yeah.
Then we got into Harvey, the first hospital I went to. And I remember Rick was just cussing up a storm because there's a lady or a car in front of us that wouldn't pull over. And I'm like, hit the siren, get him over here.
That's right.
And I remember it was a green car, because we finally got around them. And I saw it out the back of the ambulance, the window. It was a old green car. And we got to the first emergency room, and they called ahead, so they knew everything was there. Dr. Nias was my ER doctor there. And they wheeled me in, and I'm sitting in the stretcher, and they're like trying to figure out how to move me over, and I just kind of scooted over to the emergency table, or the ER table. So I'm laying there, and they start cutting all my clothes off, and they went to cut my boots off, which I just bought in August in Montana, because I was out that summer, I was custom combining. I started down in Oklahoma, working my way up to Montana, which is the best experience I've ever had.
Yeah.
And they went to cut my cowboy boots off, and I said, "Don't you dare cut these boots." I said, "These are brand new, and you don't cut a guy's boots off." And like, "Oh, it's just easier if we cut them off and pull them." I said, "No, you're not cutting these boots." I said, "Pull these boots off. You're not cutting my boots off." And they pulled my boots off. And then since they didn't have arms, they're trying an IV in my feet. But all my veins had collapsed because I was just out of blood.
Yeah.
And so they're working there, sticking me with this IV in my foot. And that was just extremely painful.
Oh, I can imagine that.
And so I was trying to concentrate on something else. And they bring in this black garbage bag. And it wasn't even 3 feet away from my head. They sit on the table beside me and pull my arms out and lay them down beside me. And I'm just kind of like, well, that's kind of interesting. Because
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend them do it. I don't think most people would really act how I did. I just thought it was kind of neat.
Yeah,
So I didn't
putting it out there and you're looking over there and saying, "There's my arms."
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, some
it just
people might
had to-
really freak
had
out.
to- oh yeah, had to be weird. You know, more than weird. But yeah, I'm like you. Maybe they shouldn't do that to everybody. 'Cause there's some people that would freak out once they. I mean, they already know what's going on, but to actually see them not on attached, I can see. Some people freaking out. Yeah.
Oh, and I was like, cool. And I just watched them scrubbing them up and cleaning them. They're trying to get me cleaned up. Then they finally got the IV in me, and they started putting blood into me again. But then, it's a small hospital. They didn't have a whole lot of blood. And luckily, I'm O negative. And they ran out of my blood types. They just started putting any blood they had in me.
Yeah.
And they were going to fly me to Bismarck, which is over about 130 miles away. And they're going to send a helicopter down. So they send out the helicopter, which had a bunch of blood for me also, out of Bismarck to come pick me up and take me to Bismarck to treat me for shock. But I was doing so well. I'm just sitting there talking to everybody. My aunt and uncle showed up, my cousin, and some other family from Hertzfield, and just people were showing up. And I'm just talking completely normal with everybody. And they decided to fly me straight to Minneapolis. So they got me the helicopter and they gave me some new blood of my type. Then they flew down an airplane, and then they flew me directly down to Minneapolis. And then I landed in Minneapolis. And one thing I do remember, because I was awake the whole time, and I was arguing on the plane because I'm laying down. And I said, "Well, can I sit up to look out the window?" I'm like, "Well, no, we can't do that." I said, "Well, this is boring. I just want to look out the window."
Yeah.
And then I finally got him to let me sit up to look out the windows. And then I landed in Minneapolis, and I joked to him. I said, "By the way, it's a lot colder here than it was in North Dakota." So I'd make that joke at them guys. And they wheeled me into the emergency room down there at North Memorial Medical Center. And my doctor, Dr. Alan Van Beek, came in the room. And my other surgeon was Dr. Muldowney. He came in and he said, "John, we have your whole story. We have little time to discuss this, so we need to make this fast." He said, "We have two choices. We can either put your arms on or leave them off." And I just said, "Well, I'm here. Put them back on." And he said, "Well, before we do that, you have to know the risks of it, because we can put them on. It can cause infection. It could kill you. And there's a high chance that they're not going to be able to stay on. We might have to remove them later. You won't have any function of them." And, give me all this news. And I said, "I don't care. I want my arms back. Put them back on." And he's like, "Okay, we'll get you prepped and ready for surgery." And I said, "Well, I can't do that." And he's like, "Well, why not?" I said, "Well, I got to have my parents' permission." I said, "I don't know anything about this stuff, and I don't know if we can afford it." And he's like, "You're 18. We don't need their permission. We can just go." And I'm like, "No," I said, "I need to talk to my mom or dad because I can't do this." And what happened was my parents were in Bismarck when my accident happened, because they were there to visit a cousin of mine who was in a car accident. And, this is before cell phones too.
Yeah.
And everybody knew they were down there, and they called my cousins in Bismarck, and they were at the hospital waiting for my parents to show up to visit my cousin. And it just so happened my parents were walking into the hospital at the exact same time the helicopter was taking off to come get me. And my cousin stopped. I said, "John's had an accident." And mom's like, "What happened?" She's like, "That helicopter's leaving right now to go pick him up." And, then it just went from there. And then my dad jumped on the airplane, the first plane in Minneapolis. And I'm talking with my doctor in Minneapolis, telling him that I need to talk to my dad. And just at that second, my dad walked in the doors. And I talked to him for maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes is all, because I need to get surgery immediately.
Yeah.
And he said, don't worry about it. Go to surgery. I'll see you when you get up and everything's gonna be fine and okay. And he loves me. And I went for the first surgery was 6 hours, and they had to shorten my arms 2 inches because the nerves and veins, they couldn't get them together anymore. And the bones were shattered too. So they had to
Yeah.
shorten 2 inches so there's enough room to get the nerves and veins back together.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that for 6 hours, they bolt everything on with metal. And then the second surgery, they took skin off my legs and put on my arms because it was all shredded.
Yeah.
And I only had one tricep muscle left on my right side. It was the only muscle that was still there. Everything else was ripped apart. And they took that muscle and flipped it over and made a bicep out of it. And then my left bicep, they took a muscle on my back and flipped it over and attached it down here. And that's my left bicep. So I don't actually have triceps, but I can still move my arms like this.
Yeah.
And the doctors have never, they can't explain it. They said, you don't have triceps. There's no way you should be able to do that. But for some reason, it works. And they hope to have shoulder movement. And they said if I ever had elbow movement, that'd be great if I had elbow movement. And, I have finger movement. I can hold stuff and, I can write with a pen and
Yeah.
drink. And so
Had to learn to reuse everything, didn't you?
very much. Took years of therapy. Because
Yeah.
like even with the left muscle they put in, the bicep, it wouldn't work. And it was even that summer or that fall, it still wasn't working. And they attached electrodes to it, and that electrocute me all the time to get it to go. And that would work, but I just could not get my brain to figure out how to make it work.
Yeah.
And then one day I was just laying there on the therapy table, and I was just thinking about something else, trying to figure out how to do work, and all of a sudden it just moved. I'm like, it moved, we got something figured out. And once I got my brain rewired to figure it out, then it started working again, and then it went much quicker. So
Have you heard of that man, Aaron Roston?
I don't think so.
He got trapped. He was hiking through a canyon, and somehow that boulder slipped,
Yes.
and he got his right arm wedged between the canyon wall and the boulder, and had to
Yeah.
eventually cut his own hand off
Hmm.
to,
I
to get
remember that
out of
one.
there. Yeah. I remember listening to him on uh, back when it was on one of those nightly news. I can't remember, but they did a story on him. And when he got to here's what I'm getting to. He got to where he had to cut the nerve, because all the muscle in the skin had pretty much died and rotten. And he said he can get through that pretty easy. So he
Yeah.
got to the nerve and said he touched that. All of a sudden, she sent pain up his arm. So what I'm
Yeah.
getting to, when you said you're on a nerve, swung across and stuck to your chest, did it not send any pain
Not a
from that
bit.
nerve being wide open and everything? And
I don't remember any pain at all. I remember walking up, so I was afraid my dog might jump up and try to bite it because he thinks it's something to play with.
yeah,
And when I was in the hospital in the emergency room, they said that anytime they touched it, I screamed because it hurt, but I don't remember the pain at all.
you don't
I don't
remember.
remember
Okay.
pain. I never saw my arms lying there when I was at the farm. I don't remember seeing blood on the walls or anything like that stuff. It's kind of erased from my memory, I think.
Yeah, yeah, I would imagine that too. So and then I don't know if you know, but I got my neck broke playing football, and
Okay.
so the pain, like you're saying, I don't remember the pain being as bad as what people would think.
Yeah.
It just your body overcompensates, sends all the endorphins to to lessen the pain, to dull the pain. Uh, but talking, like you're talking, you would think a lot of pain would be there, and like you said, probably our minds have blocked it out as well.
Yeah. I mean, your brain shuts everything off and you just go into immediate survival mode. Like people always tell me that they could never survive what I went through. And it's like, well, anybody can. It's a survival mode. Your natural instincts just kick in and everything kind of shuts off and you just do what you need to do.
Exactly. I've had people say, "Well, I couldn't be paralyzed and do what you do." I go, "Well, I probably couldn't have whatever they went through. I
Oh,
mean, I don't know, but when you're put in that situation, like you said, survival mode kicks in, and the will to live, wanting to get through, neither kicks in or it don't.
yeah.
So
Or
yeah,
when I hear people tell me stories like, oh, I was in a really bad car accident. I broke my leg and my arms and my ribs and my collarbone and da-da-da, but I just can't imagine what you went through. That just had to be terrible. I'm like, I only broke two bones. I said, you broke your whole body up. I said, you
yeah,
sound
yeah,
more
yeah.
painful than I went through. So,
I try not to minimize people's incidents.
yeah,
Obviously, there's things worse than what I've been through.
yeah.
Okay, but kind of get a little upset when I hear someone go, "Yeah, I understand what you're going through. I was in a wheelchair for 4 weeks," and I'm going, 4 weeks compared to 40 years. Okay.
You wouldn't believe how many people come out to me and say, oh, I know what you went through. I lost my finger in a saw. I mean, more people tell me they lose their fingers and they know what I
Yeah,
went through. I'm like,
yeah,
yeah, that's not quite
yeah.
the same.
Not
So,
quite the same.
uh,
Uh, I'm glad that they're feeling the vibe, understanding. But yeah, uh, and I'm sure you would say the same thing. I would not wish any of this on anybody.
no,
But again, you learn what type of person you are when you go through some big trials and tribulations.
yeah.
Okay, and you definitely learn who your friends and family are from there too.
Well, that's the weird thing because growing up, between him and or me before my accident, he's kind of like a different person now. And we're complete opposites. I mean, I never played, I came from a school of 53 kids in the entire school. There's only 11 in my class. And growing up, I was the only kid in my class from first to seventh grade. I was by myself. And I never liked attention. I didn't play sports because I don't like people looking at me. I don't like them chanting my name, or I don't like attention whatsoever. And now I do this. And I remember in high school, I had to give a speech in front of three of my classmates, and I was terrified to do it because I didn't like
Yeah, yeah,
talking in
yeah.
front of people. And now I speak to thousands of people at a time and travel the country doing it. And it's like an old habit now. It's weird how we're so different from each other.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. So I'm like you. When I was in high school, I had to give a speech, and I'm scared to death and
Oh,
don't want to be up there. But now, after all this, yeah, I'll speak to anybody that wants to put forth and listen.
and I still hate attention, but if I'm working, it doesn't bother me any. But if I'm just out on my own, then I don't. I mean, like even here, I don't even use my real name when I'm out. I have used my initials or a fake name because I don't like people knowing who I am, and I
Yeah.
kind of keep it pretty hidden. So,
All right. So now they reattached everything, and it took years of therapy. Now is everything functional? Is part of it just cosmetic that you have arms and hands? I know you showing a little bit of what you can do with your new shoulders and your new biceps where they move the muscles. Um, what about your hand movements? I know you said you can hold things, but
yeah, like my hands are always in a fist because of the nerve damage,
yeah,
and we used to have them in splints, but they just closed in on me. But I can open my hands up and squeeze. I mean, I can squeeze a beer can or hold a bottle, or
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
shovel snow, I paint. Right now, I'm re-drywalling my house and remodeling again. I do all that stuff myself, but I can't open them or extend them on my own. So I can grab
Okay.
stuff and do things, but I can't do that. But I can squeeze and hold things. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and
So
I can hold
it,
a pen and write. And my writing's no better than it was before my accident. It's still sloppy, so that hasn't changed a whole lot. But
sad thing is, before my injury, I was left-handed. After my injury, my right side's dominant.
oh,
So I
really?
had to see it. So I had to learn to write with my right hand. And actually, I can say that even though I'm paralyzed with my hands the way they are, my handwriting's better than it used to be in high school.
Yeah,
So
mine's not.
I can say mine is better. I used to do my write a research or a paper for my English teacher, and she goes, "James, I have a hard time reading this." And I go, "Well, you can't mark it wrong if you can't read it."
Exactly.
But then she
I
says,
accuse that all the time.
then she turned around and says, "No, if I can't read it, it is wrong." So I love that teacher. She ended up being one of the only teachers come to the hospital to see me when she found out I had gotten paralyzed.
Oh, okay.
So I've come to here. It's been 40 years. It took me 30 years to find her after she left the school, and I finally found her. And yeah, we stay in contact now.
Well, that's awesome.
Miss Bacon, Judy Bacon, we're talking about you if you're listening in one day. So, yep. So from there. All right. So John, I hope you got a good treat for your dog. What was his name again?
Tuffy. He was a blue healer. Yep.
Yeah.
Got him as a pup at the livestock rig.
Yeah, beautiful looking dog. So again, looking at his book, Home in One Piece by John Thompson. So beautiful, Tuffy, beautiful dog, and being smart to
Very.
show him where your other arm was laying around. So
yeah, he not only saved my life by waking me up. And like I said, when I started screaming, I just focused on him, and he just sat there with his head cocked to the side. He's the one that calmed me down. He walked with me all the way to the house. And even the day I came home from the hospital, because I was in the hospital exactly 6 weeks, and he was never allowed in the house, and he never wanted to come in the house. And they got me into the house, and they sat me on the floor and opened up the patio door for him. And he came in and sat right down on my lap and just nuzzled right into me. And
yeah,
he was just so excited to see me alive again. And
dogs and most animals, man, they're just amazing.
Oh.
They know when something's up, and they know how to give that attention that you need to help you calm down, stay warm, whatever it is, keep you from going into shock.
Very
They're
much.
amazing. They're amazing.
Very much.
So, all right. All right, John. So I hope that 911's been more advanced there instead of having to call the whole numbers to get them there. So I remember that, of course, in '92, where I live, we have the 911. We've had it forever, as long as I know.
Okay.
So you're really back in the rural area during that time, like you said.
Well, yeah. Plus, we didn't have addresses back then either. We were rural Route 1. So to get to our place, you go a half mile north, you go 2 miles south, you turn at the tree that blew down in the storm of '91. And
that's right. Oh, wow.
That's how you got to our places. But luckily, like I said, all these people knew me, and they just said, go to the Thompson farm, and they knew where it was at. So
yeah. To me, it's again, I just can imagine those 3 EMTs coming in, again, knowing who you are already, and then backing back out going, what do we do here?
I call them my 3 little ducks. They just kind of walked in a row and looked at me and turned around and walked back out. That's called my 3 little ducklings.
Well, that's amazing that man, I hate to say this, but being so rural back there where you were living in rural area, for them to come up with an idea of what we need to be doing, to go find the arms, put them in a bag of ice. I mean, of course, I guess they would have known that from someone that may have had a thumb cut off or a finger cut off, know to ice it. And so they're figuring do the same thing here.
Yeah, just excellent training.
Yeah,
it's like, now I do the North Dakota Firefighter School. I've done that for 2 years now, and just training firefighters and telling them my story and what the EMS did for me. And I'm a huge supporter and advocate for EMS and firefighters, and just helping them train to know what to do in the situation, how to deal with a patient, and telling my story so they kind of know what to expect that's going to be coming from the patient on it, and just to give back and thank them and all the EMS people. And like every time I go to high school speaking, that's the one thing I really push is join your EMS. All you high school kids, save a life. I said, please consider joining your volunteer EMS, your firefighters, and be part of the community like that. I really push for that.
Yeah. And if you don't want to go that route, at least get the basic, the CPR and the Heimlich maneuver.
Yes.
So if nothing else, at least get those basics. So like I said, possibly you could save a life.
Very much.
All right, John. So your book, how do we get a hold of it? I'll tell you, before I got on here with you, I just ordered my book. So it'll be coming here in a couple of days.
I finally just got listed on Amazon last month. So it's now available on Amazon in paperback and download for Kindle. So I finally got that up and going. And you can also find me on my Linktree. It's John Wayne Thompson 92 at Linktree. And all my socials are on there to follow me on social media. So then there's a direct link to Amazon for my book also.
And I'll put that information in our show notes. Make it
Okay.
easier for people to find too as well. So, all right, John, man, I'm glad I got to meet with you, and took us a while to get started here. Well, we met 3, 4 weeks ago, nearly
Yeah.
3.5 weeks, trying to get this done, and I'm glad we finally did, man. I'm glad I get to meet you. I just I'm thrilled when I can meet other people that have survived through hardships, circumstances that people just wouldn't even think of.
Yeah.
And
And
so,
since we have something in common with that, and we both overcame something great, and it was great being on your show because this is my very first podcast I've ever done. So this is exciting for me also, and
all
it was
right,
great.
well, being the first one, don't be bashful for the others. Just
Well, I
jump on
got a
in
couple
there.
of more I'm still working on setting up right now. So
There we go. Good deal. So, all right, John. Hey, thank you for being here. Hey, we know people are hurting and struggling, and if you can leave us with a positive message.
one thing is like I said, I'm remodeling my house right now. I mean, I'm using a chainsaw, I'm cutting up trees, I'm hanging drywall. I took my ceilings down, I took down popcorn ceiling, and I do my own yard work. I painted my entire house. I do my own lawn. And I've never let it slow me down because people get on me about I should just hire a gun because I'm going to hurt myself. And I'm like, I can do this on my own. I am so proud of the stuff I'm able to do. And I like to be able to show people that I can do stuff because I know people that have just minor disabilities and they just kind of, oh, let somebody else do it. I can do nothing anymore. They just kind of sit around and do nothing. And I'm trying to be as active as I can and do as much as possible because I just don't like to be helped by anybody. I like to be able to do things on my own and proud of what I can do.
Figure it out.
Yeah, don't let your
Figure it out.
disability shut you down. I mean,
Yep,
you can always find a way.
that's
So,
right. Don't let it define you and shut you down.
oh,
That's a good thing. As they say, John. Well, I've said this to you a while ago. You don't have to lose both arms, but whatever your circumstance you're going through, hang in there like a hair in a biscuit. So, all right. All right, John, thank you for coming on, hanging there for a minute. Everybody else, they share us out with someone else that would enjoy this story. I'm Dr. James Purdue, the professor of perseverance. Do something today, tomorrow, something next week that's going to help you persevere past your paralysis.